What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to go over the trades that we took on Friday as well as the game plan going into this week. I feel like it's going to be a good week coming. A lot of volatility in the markets recently, so we should be able to catch some decent moves. So on Friday, as you guys know, massive move in the market to the downside, and I'm going to go over exactly what happened and what we took. So when it came to Friday, when we look at the 30-minute charts, you guys know, or if you don't know, the 30-minute chart here on the weeklies tell me the trend in the market. So on the 665 puts we had, and then the these are supposed to be, I think we had the 675 calls, yeah. So 670, actually no, those are the wrong ones. If we grab the, I'm looking for the call side here, 675s, yeah, right here. So 675 calls, you can see what happened here. On Friday, we ended up pushing up into major resistance here on the 30-minute chart. On the call side, that blue line, the 50 SMA, that's major resistance when we aren't crossed on either side of the premium. So going into the day, Friday, we were neutral because 10 SMA, which is the green, is below the 50 SMA here. We're not crossed. So we're neutral over there, and then we flip to the put side, obviously off of open. You can see down here, 10 SMA is below the 50 here, and we're neutral. So going into today, all I was looking for was a cross on either side of the premium. When we pull up the 0DT charts here right off of open, you could see we actually did get a cross right off open, but these crosses off open I stay away from. I always wait like 25-30 minutes before I'm taking a trade, and it did work out here, but again, the opening volatility isn't something I want to be a part of, especially when it comes to the crosses. I wouldn't take a cross right off of open like this, especially with where we opened at the 30-minute 50. So this wasn't a valid trade to take, and that 30-minute 50 was a strong area of resistance. So, I really wasn't, too keen on the long side until that 30-minute 50 broke. So this chart ended up crossing negative here. You could see 10 SMA went below the 50, but obviously you guys know Trump announced the tariff news or whatever, and that tanked the market. So there really wasn't a trade opportunity. We ended up obviously closing above the 10 SMA here, but you could see that 10 SMA was still sloped down really hard. So again, that wasn't even a trade you would have taken. And like I said, we're at the 30-minute 50 on the call side. So ideally, you would have taken a short off of this, but this candle ended up moving so quickly that it wasn't worth the risk taking this with the 50 SMA at 0.70 and then taking this all the way down here at 0.43. So especially off of news, I'm not taking this type of trade. And if we flip back to the put side, obviously these ended up crossing, and we got a massive move lower. Again, though, this is not a trade I'm taking just because one, this dump was caused off of news. It could have easily whipped right back up and pumped, to the upside. Oh my God, I cannot, my mouse is so broken where I can't, when I hold and drag, it just doesn't stick. So, yeah, we end up crossing on the puts, not something I was taking just because, news-driven cross. And then also, if we look here on the put side, we were also at the 30-minute 50. So we still popped up into that 30-minute 50. It was a really hefty move really quickly, so this wasn't something I wanted to take on the 0DT chart, and I was fine with that. There was a massive move lower. 30-minute ended up crossing on the put side. Market flip bearish. You could see 10 SMA went above the 50, and as soon as that happened, you could see we end up trending a lot lower to the downside. But I didn't take any positions on it just because it was such a drastic move that happened so quickly. It could have easily pulled back to the 30-minute 50 here, and waited before it got the next leg, but obviously that didn't happen. So when it came to Friday, I didn't take anything in regards to the system because it was just so quick. We got the drop, and the cross was so quick, so extended from the SMAs, and it wasn't something I was I didn't think was worth putting risk on the table, especially after the week that we had. Flawless week with the system. We didn't take a single losing trade on any 5-minute cross on SPY. So all the future trades we took were 50 to 100 point winners every single trade this week. I think we had like 3, maybe 4 of them, and they were all winners. So we had a really good week. I didn't really feel like throwing a trade on when news ended up causing a cross and could have easily bounced right back up if something else came out. So going into this week, obviously the market's bearish. I know futures are up like 300 points on NQ, so we're probably going to end up getting some sort of dip to the 30-minute 50 down in here. And if we do, what I'll be looking for is one of two things. So when it comes to taking a trade, you could either buy this dip immediately at the 30-minute 50. Obviously, it could be a bit higher risk, especially if you're trading futures, because volatility is really high. So the point swings are through the roof. You could wait for a negative cross on call. So I'm guessing, if we get a big gap up, calls are going to be crossed, or at least crossing. And then what you want to do from there, we're probably going to be near this 30-minute 50, wait for that 30-minute or that 5-minute chart on calls to cross negative. So 10 SMA crosses back below the 50, 50 turns down, that we take an entry point to go short. And that's like the A+ setup for tomorrow if that does happen, because we're going to be hitting major support here on the put side at 30-minute 50, and then if we get the negative cross on calls, that's going to confirm we're going to get that bounce off of that major support and see a really good bounce off of that 50. So that's kind of the A+ setup you want to watch for tomorrow. And then of course a put cross. If we get some sort of put cross tomorrow, that'll be something to look out for as well. So you kind of have two trade opportunities when it comes to the downside. You either take the negative cross on calls if we get it when we get this dip to the 50, or let's just say we also get a put cross. So we negative cross on calls, we get a move lower to the 30-minute or the 5-minute 50 on puts, then you wait for the 0DT puts to cross to get another short entry. So there's potential 2 trades tomorrow when it comes to the downside, and both of those are really good trades you want to be taking. If we just absolutely rip tomorrow and there's no downside move, then obviously 10 SMA here is going to cross back below the 50 on the puts, and we're going to just continue to trend up, which I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll have to see how that ends up playing out. So if that does happen, we're just going to be looking for a trade to the long side, which would be a 10 SMA reclaim on the call side, because by the time this chart crosses the negative, the calls are already going to be crossed on the 0DT. So at that point, wait for that SMAs to catch up, cross negative, and then there's probably going to be some sort of 10 SMA reclaim to take. But I would rather a trade to the downside just because we have the 30-minute chart in our favor. So that's kind of what I'm going to be looking at going into tomorrow and what I'm going to be watching for SPY. So yeah, we're just going to have to see how we open. I don't even know what contracts we're going to get. I don't even know what SPY's at the moment, but this is just what I had on watch list for Friday when we ended up picking the new contract. So obviously that could change the contracts, but it's the same game plan either way, because the current ones are going to be crossed either way most likely. So yeah, same game plan. And then we also closed out ABAT, which I went over yesterday. Again, it was just a clean break of this little trend line we had going. We closed above a high, and we ended up taking that for a nice ripper. So yeah, you can see these 3 highs stacked up right here. Let's see, where were they? Yeah, right here. Pretty sure this is where we took it. You can see the little trend line broke above. I didn't use the Heikin-Ashi candles for the trade. This is just kind of what my chart is set up because of the system, but it was a regular chart play. We broke above this trend line, and my stop went to low day, and yeah, we ended up breaking above this high. I entered, stop low day, and we swung it, and it was up like 17% on Friday. So that was a really good move. Caught 200% on that. I don't really have any individual names on watch. I did end up closing this trade out, I think, knee on Friday, just because it was a bit extended. So we ended up getting, I think, what did we say, like 75% off of that. Still gonna be a name I'm watching going into the week. Some individual names I do like though. I know I saw this had plenty of flow on Friday and Thursday, I believe. Poet. I mean, it just looked really nice. I know the volume was through the roof on these 2 days. Pulling back to the SMAs. One name that I'm going to be watching for, and then another one, Coors. This name, I would imagine it's going to gap up if the market opens green, just because how strong this name was. I mean, on Friday, you could see it was up, 2.66%, and the market was absolutely destroyed. So, market bounces, opens green, really nice green. I'd imagine that Coors is probably going to get a nice gap up going into tomorrow. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good setup. You could honestly, these previous highs right here, we're probably going to break above or open above them tomorrow, but that's kind of the play you could have taken. If we ended up pulling back, you could have entered, which we probably did on Friday. Take an entry point. You could see stacked up highs. We finally broke above on Friday, get an entry there on Friday. But I don't like the individual names. I kind of go through that more in the Discord. YouTube's kind of more so for the system, mainly because I'm probably going to be confusing you guys if I throw in the regular charts. But yeah, that's pretty much what we did on Friday. That's the game plan going into the week. And yeah, if you guys want to learn, join Discord down below. It's where I post all these trades, man. And I have a I have a channel dedicated to these charts and, step by step of examples of how to, read the charts, how to look for these trades, and what to look for. So, all we're doing is playing crosses on an option chart, and, it really isn't easy. It doesn't get easier than that. Like I said, 5-minute crosses this week. That's literally all we did. You just have to know. I always go over this. You have to know what the best trade is going into every day. Like going into tomorrow, I know the best trade is going to be that negative cross on the call side if we get it, because it's simple. If you know how to read the 30-minute chart on the puts, we're crossed on the puts. We're probably going to get a pullback to that 50 with how futures are gapping up. So, we get a pullback to the 30-minute 50. We're pulling back to major support on puts. I'm not interested in going long yet because we're at that major support. We get that negative cross on calls. That confirms we're bouncing off that support, and that's our short entry. It's as simple as that. You have to know how to read the 30-minute chart to know your best trade for the day, because 30-minute chart paints a bigger picture and what you want to be trading when it comes to the crosses intraday. So yeah, you just got to know how to do that. Once you know how to do that, it's really simple, and you just have to be patient and wait for the setups. Like, it was probably very tempting to take this cross right here off open, but I didn't, because one, sitting at that 30-minute 50 on the calls, and then two, it's right off open. High risk trade if you did take it. Like I say, 15, 30 minutes before I take a trade, wasn't anything in this mess that I was interested in taking, because we hit that major support on the 30-minute. And then obviously on the put side, it was all news driven, so nothing really I wanted to take and be part of. So yeah, that's all I got. If you guys enjoyed, drop a sub, join the Discord if you want to learn. I'm out. Peace.